Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast discussion on lore, the High Republic, the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. Welcome to our Zoom meeting. My name is Matthew. I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I'm joined from across the continent, the magic of the internet, by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how you doing this week?
I am doing good. I'm doing well. I'm posting us live on the Discord. 'Cause I forgot to do that. But I did do that on the Facebook and the Twitter, so I didn't forget to do that.
There we go.
But yeah, I am doing great.
Right on. This week, meetings, they're hit or miss. It depends on what they're doing, what they are. But if you're a space wizard, if you're a master space wizard, the meetings can be riveting. The meetings can be worth writing home about, especially or including the space Zoom meetings. This week we talk about the Jedi High Council and the range of council meetings we've gotten in canon so far. But first, we got a few plugs to get out of the way. Off the top, of course, as always, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Iron Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we've got YouTube memberships, we got super chats, we got all that fun stuff. We got comments, we got a comment section down below. Chime in, let us know what you think, chat away, and yeah, if it fits with the flow,
like
the video, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff. If you comment and it fits with the flow of what we're saying, or not, we'll pick it up later. But if you super chat, if you give us some moolah, some Republic credits here, we will we'll put the comment to the top of the list and get to it as soon as humanly, droidedly, wequaily possible. I don't know. Name of the species. There we go. So yeah, check that out. Also, Star Wars Underworld Discord server. The link is in the description below. We just chatting away about different things. We got a bunch of spoiler threads going in terms of different shows like Bad Batch, like Discovery, like all the fun stuff, and just any kind of news that pops up. Thread channel that I'm starting to feel the bug. I'm starting to feel the celebration bug. So yeah, check out the link in the description below to get into our Discord server. Joel, is anything happening? Has anything happened recently? Anything happening soon?
This week, nothing much. Although I might decide if I have time to do
Like
an
no events or anything specific.
No events. Maybe I'll do an impromptu game night. That was last week.
Okay.
Week after, I'm hoping to continue with the marathon because we're still going with with Young Jedi Adventures, and
Go.
we're staying strong on that. But yes, we are discussing, we're chatting, we're having fun, we're showing off our collections. It's all good. It's all fun.
There we go. So check that out. We got a few more things. Well, first off, gotta plug my own other podcast. Wait a minute. Tractor Bean Comics Reviews. Comics come out Wednesdays. Comics are for Wednesdays, and Wednesdays are for comics. So Chris Abbott and I every Wednesday, at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We talk about whatever comics come out. Just one booked this week. The Phantom Menace special, I believe. And so we'll do that. But then we're going to talk about this YouTube, this animated show that came out, just at least the episode. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion there to fill the time. And then, of course, next week, right here on Iron Canon, we'll have our full convo. I'll pick that up at the end. But yeah, check that out. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, Wednesdays. Of course, the flagship, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the channel as well. And speaking of which, up on the channel, Dominic's interview with Graham Hancock, who wrote the Force of Creativity. It's all about the history of Lego Star Wars. So check that out. Check that interview out. That is up now. Coming up on the Rayside channel on May 2nd is Hannah's interview with the one and only, this is great, one and only Gavin Bouquet, who, of course, worked on the prequels, and Hannah doing a good job, plugging that one, getting all excited, getting us all excited for that. Of course, May 4th, May 3rd, May 4th, we're all seeing Phantom Menace, so it's good timing, a great prequels delight. So check that out on Hannah's channel on the Rayside on May 2nd. Then on May 4th, F1053 Baby Makes Remix drops on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. So check out Din and the band, and they're amazing. And sometimes Star Wars inspired music. It's always a bit more serious, a bit more. It's never a parody or satire, but definitely some fun all around good times. But yeah, check that out on wherever you. Well, those three places you can get your music: F1053, Baby Makes 3 Mix. So there's some plugs out of the way. We'll pick those back up again at the end. Let's dive in though. This week in Star Wars, what are you thinking, Joel? What are your thoughts?
Well, first, I actually have something I do have a week of. I went to an anime expo in Irvine, in the Hilton. Had a bunch of art and stuff, but also had Star Wars art, and I picked up this cute little thing of poor little baby Yoda. He dropped his ice cream.
Oh no.
Poor little Grogu. You got it. You know ice cream. Shit. But yeah, the artist was there himself. This one guy's art, whose name I actually kind of forgot. But he's a local Orange County kid like myself, so that was a lot of fun. I went with our friend Chris Sequels, so that was fun. He took a picture of a guy in a cosplay with the Mandalorian. A lot of fun there. As for my thoughts of the week, so as you know, I'm reading The Living Force. You know, good book. I highly recommend it. Haven't finished it, but good book. Highly recommend. And you know, one of the big lessons, and this isn't really a spoiler, so is you know, for the Jedi to be more intimate with the masses, with the peoples, get to know them, help them out, that sort of thing. Hence why I put in the notes, no, not that kind of intimacy.
Right. Not Rail Averos style intimacy.
No. Although, no. Although there are some bars, they go to the bars.
Interesting.
Anyway, but I was thinking about this, and I'm like, you know, water first.
It's a good question,
but you know, the question I was thinking about is like, you know, I always feel like in the when EU stuff and wider lore, maybe even now, it's always easier for Jedi post the prequels to be a little bit more intimate with people. There's just not that many of them. Like the Jedi organization during the prequels at the height of the powers, it was 10,000 strong. And, you know, in both Legends, and I'm going to just kind of assume when we get the Rey film, hopefully, although it's still being worked on according to the guy who's writing it, so that's good. You know, I don't expect Rey to start out with 10,000 new Jedi. It's like, here's 10,000 new Jedi, Rey. Here you go. Go figure out what to do. Shoot. You know, it's probably going to be her, maybe 3, 4 students max, maybe 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't expect there to be that many. Heck, Luke, even in Legends, his new Jedi Order never got up to like 100. Only got to like 100 Jedi max. You know, probably took centuries for the Jedi to reach 10,000 strong. And you know, I just asked myself, you know, at what point I mean, obviously, I don't think you need to put a cap on it, but like, at what point does it get hard to manage 10,000 Jedi across the whole galaxy? I know I know in terms of a galaxy that's a small number, but that's still a big number for an organization, regardless. And it's like, well, at one point, it's like, well, of course the Jedi have trouble being a little more intimate these days. They're 10,000 strong. It's a big organization. You can't be everywhere at once, and you kind of have to manage all these people and make sure none of them go crazy and start blowing up everybody, which can happen.
Yeah.
It's happened a couple times. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think about like the Jedi in terms of their intimacy, and it's like, you know, it's like, well, Luke and Rey always get it easier because they only get to like 100. Like they're always like one little Praxium on Yavin or wherever Rey is, compared to like, well, even the Jedi of the High Republic have all these bases and stations and have a whole bureaucracy going on. So yeah, that's kind of my thing is like people who kind of dunk on the pre-Luke and I guess now Rey era Jedi. It's like, well, they both didn't have the numbers and resources that the old Jedi had for both better and worse. So don't they kind of are allowed to go to bars and party with people because you know the Jedi of the prequel had rules and had 10,000 strong. So I don't know. That was my thoughts about Jedi intimacy, and no, not that kind of intimacy.
I mean, what you were getting at. I mean, prequel Jedi go to bars. And I brought up Rail Averos, but you know they go to You know, I mean, you have Anakin and Obi-Wan going to the Outlander Club, Outrider Club, or whatever,
Yeah.
on Jedi business. But I mean, maybe not. I mean,
Obi-Wan
there's
goes to
probably
Dex.
yeah, there's probably is it like a Jedi bar, just somewhere just next to the temple or something. Who knows? I mean, it's a good point in that 10,000 people. There are going to be members of the High Council who have never met swaths of Jedi Knights, right? Because you can only meet so many people in your lifetime, as long as your lifetime is. You only get to know so many people. What people? I think there's like you can know maybe about 200 people. I mean, I can.
That's human time. Imagine Yoda
Yeah.
time.
So I mean, I can look at my Facebook friend list, and I could be all I know where these people come from. I'm not in contact with them anymore, but um, to have that many people in your noggin, even, but to have even met them, it's a good question. Whereas, yeah, so this is kind of Jedi intimacy connection with each other, even though it is a big family. And then also, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, after Order 66, the Jedi depend on everyone else. They depend on the wider galaxy. They depend on the people they meet and the generosity of the people they meet to hide them, to protect them, and then in turn they can hopefully protect others. We've seen lots of stories about that lately. So yeah, it's an interesting point in that. Yeah, again, 10,000. You don't need to worry about the Martez sisters. You can just give a platitude. Oh, too bad they died for a good cause or whatever. Whereas Ahsoka is experiencing Order 66 before Order 66 happens, right? She's already out of the Order. She's already without the Order. So she does have to depend on them and connect with them. And that's also why she's able to survive through the whole reign of the Empire. In part because she knows to have contact with folks. Yeah, we see in the Mandoverse era she's kind of secluded on her own, but yeah, I mean,
some people are just
become
recluses, sadly.
But we also know she connected well with Hera, and was training Sabine, and it's yeah, and of course Hera with Kanan. Right. There's that kind of intimacy that is connected to the other kind of, but there it is. There's the connection.
Right.
So yeah, it's a good point. Also, how do you control 10,000 Jedi? We'll get to that in a second in our main topic, I think.
Maybe some sort of council, make it somewhat.
Maybe a council, maybe a few other councils. There are other councils that we didn't get to, but we won't get to. But yeah, there's got to be some sort of what's it called, delegated federalism.
Yeah.
Some sort. There you go. All right, that's. Do you have anything more to add about that one, or?
Nope. It's just I don't expect post Endor, unless we go for a very long time, to ever get back to 10,000 Jedi strong. I think we'll see I mean, for Acolyte, we'll see an era of 10,000 Jedi strong, but that's in the past.
Well, and that's what's interesting about High Republic and about prequels, and then the contrast with everything Luke has to experience. He has to find
or Rey.
Well, I'll say for Luke in the original trilogy, has to find Yoda and Obi-Wan, right? And then has to find, and then Rey will have to figure it out what she does. We got a question. I'll get to this now because we're in an interlude. We don't know. We don't quite know. We might find out soon.
Because he's Quinlan Voss. That's why.
That's how. Because he's Quinlan Voss. Because he's kind of shady. He's kind of off the beaten path, I guess. Good question. Well, I think that's a story worth telling. The story we can get, especially if we get more adventurous. We got to get more from them. So, also live long and prosper. Okay, my weekend Star Wars is this human right here. Yeah, I'm all torture poets department right now. So I'm bringing it in to the podcast. I'm not holding back. Even my Ask SW on Thursday is going to be about this. So yeah, just thinking about there's some interesting parallels, some mashups. So I think Vader's Girl on Instagram, TikTok, Chloe's Fandom Life. Look these folks up on Instagram. they've got some pretty fantastic mashups of like scenes, especially from the prequels about Anakin and Obi-Wan, or Anakin and Padme, and just how they map on to songs from Torture Post Department. And so I had to bring her in. I had to do that. And Down Bad. So Down Bad. If you listen to that and you think Anakin and Attack of the Clones, it's a perfect matchup. I mean, not always, but it's if Anakin is himself, everything comes out teenage petulance.
Yeah.
So but getting to that album, yeah, I'm always there's an interesting thing of just how many. I mean, this is what I brought up with that panel, that there's so many because there's Swifties everywhere. There are Swifties within Star Wars fandom, and so folks who are so dedicated to make these mashups and dedicated to both fandoms, you're gonna come out of the woodwork, especially when a new album comes out. So yeah, we're eating well in her depressed breakup album era, but it's a good one. So yeah, lots of, well, that's the thing. It's just is Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Anakin at his angstiest, as most raw and emotional. Holding on to this romantic attachment that he should let go of. You think ideally, and here Taylor had to let go of this one, so, or two of them at least. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm listening to that album nonstop, and I'm even bringing it into my Star Wars podcast. So there we go. I probably won't bring it in too much to Tractor Beam, don't worry, but I had to get that in there because it came out a few weeks ago, or came out 2 Fridays ago. Yeah, so. All right. I think that's about it for that. I need more coffee is what I also need. Speaking of which, there was a animated show coming up. We're gonna join the podcast area more next week. But for now, let's chat a bit about Bad Batch season 3, the penultimate episode 14, Flash Strike. I thought it was a good setup episode. Definitely laid the groundwork, even with that the dragon, the
Zillo Beast,
that one, Godzilla thing, the Zilla Beast. And yeah, just again continuing Omega's quest to escape, but also oh gosh, what's her name? The doctor.
Emery.
Yeah, Emery. She Emery Carr. She finally comes around, and she really does end up crossing the Rubicon, as we kind of expected she would, but it was one of those, again, things we expect can still be satisfying. Just because we expect them doesn't mean they're not satisfying. So she's turned into a pretty interesting character, I'd say, Emery. Especially, we're curious about her backstory, but her present choices in the story we have really reflecting her expression of her identity as a clone, and that's one of the themes going back all the way through from Clone Wars, is clones regaining their dignity and their individuality, their personhood, even though they weren't made that way ideally. But you can't help it. A person will always fight to be a person in different ways, in constructive ways, in destructive ways maybe, but in constructive ways in this case. We don't know if she's a Jango Fett clone or not, but or somehow is or not. But to see her even her role carry on everything we've seen with the whole Bad Batch, just being heroic, fleshed out characters. She's come around, and I mean, there has to be something about even a maternal instinct, seeing those kids in that vault, such a horrific, dark reality, even of our world, but also definitely of this fictional Star Wars world of the Empire, that she takes action. I mean, that's another thing looking forward that this series is setting up, is the birth of the Rebel Alliance. And just, you have Rex and Echo, for example, saying, okay, I'm going to step up and take action against this Empire, even if the odds are against them. So yeah, Emery continuing that tradition, again, sets everything up for next week when all the juice is going to get squeezed out. Again, this nothing terribly gets resolved this week, and didn't have to, because again, a whole bunch has to get resolved next week. So we'll see. Yeah, see what happens. Joel, you have some points in there I won't steal from you. So what did you think of Flash Strike, episode 14, Flash Strike? I didn't even forget to do that part. Episode 14, Flash Strike, and your thoughts on this year, where it's going, etc.
Yeah, it's all coming to a head. It begs the question though. I think that we're thinking to get resolved. I think the question we gotta be asking is, what is gonna get resolved?
Yeah.
Like, what is? I don't want to. I mean, I don't, maybe I don't want to say what was the point. To, to be fair, I think a bit harsh of a statement, but
Yeah.
like when this is all said and done, what got resolved? What is being saved for other things? What just never got resolved at all, right? Like I
Mhm.
think, I think there's a lot of setup for other things to happen, but I think in terms of the narrative being told here, I do
Mhm.
think at the end of the day it's probably going to hone in on the Bad Batch as a group. And my sad prediction is me thinks the Bad Batch of the group doesn't mean they're going to die, but I do think they're
Yeah.
not going to be together when um this whole thing is wrapped up. Um uh when this whole thing is wrapped up and done with.
Yeah.
So I do think like this is the story of the batch, and then by the end, the batch is no longer together.
Mhm.
Whether or not that they dealt with Project Necromancer, whether or not any of the backstories are revealed or answers,
Yeah.
I don't know, or even if Omega goes with Ventress or not, we don't know. But clearly, or whether Tech's alive or not. We haven't seen the CX Trooper in 2 episodes. His last appearance, which is kind of taking Omega to the place. Um, he might not be Tech. He might be Cody, and that they're gonna solve him for something else. Uh, I'm not even talking about how long the finale is gonna be.
Yeah.
I don't know about that either.
Who knows?
So again, um, so it's like, okay, well, what is going to get resolved, and then kind of once that's done, it's like, okay, now
Mhm.
we can really look at the Bad Batch of the story as a
Yeah.
singular thing and really narrow in. Okay, what was this story really about? And then we could talk about it. It'd be a lot of fun.
I mean, the real strength of the show is that we already have a clear idea of what the story was about. It was about this band of 5 siblings. I forget the number. They go, the number goes up and down, but this group of these clones who are little off, a little different, and that weirdness and the difference is a feature, not a bug. I like that
But
expression a lot. It is the feature, is their strength, in that they're able to own their quirkiness, own their uniqueness. Again, continue the theme of clone individuality, and how Omega very much comes into her own in that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's why, I can see the batch saying, okay, we're no longer necessary as a unit. We're
we're no
all
longer safe as a unit.
no longer safe as a unit. I mean, Echo going off with Rex, kind of predict or foreshadows this, to say they have to go off and do different things. Yeah, maybe Omega does have to go off with Ventress and do her thing. But yeah, I mean, that's also why I think the CX droid, the CX clone, whatever it is going to be revealed. And I think it's probably Tech. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but seems likely.
I mean, here's a dark thought. I've been thinking about this because,
Yeah.
you know, it's called Project Necromancer.
Yeah.
It might be Tech, but is Tech alive? Is he Game of Thrones? I mean, I don't know if you've been following Jennifer Corbett. She's been posting Game of Thrones stuff.
Interesting.
Is he has the dragon been Ice King zombified? Is he like
Yeah.
the one night guy that was brought back to life? It's like Tech alive, or is Tech alive, but
Right.
not in the way we want him to be alive?
Or then that's the question: is he salvageable? Is he
Yeah, that too.
Can he recover and come back to be the tech we know and love? Obviously transformed and gone through its experience, but yeah, that's it's an open question, and it'd be interesting if they didn't give us the feel good, satisfying answer, because this is the Empire, because this is the dark times, right?
Yeah.
We need to. I don't want to use
Got
the word.
25 years of this to go.
Yeah, they aren't going anywhere for a while, right? Is it 25 years or 15 years? I think it's 15 years.
25.
Right, 25. It's 15 to A New Hope.
Yes.
That's right. So yeah, that's true. Or yeah, some number, significant amount of time. Yeah, and that they keep in the ascent. So yeah, it's gonna almost. I mean, yeah, maybe it'll end kind of Empire Strikes Back, Last Jedi, which is an odd thought of, or Revenge of the Sith, right? If evil is ascendant, the New Hope is in going underground and going underworld. There we go, and trying to find ways to fight back, and that is the story of this time, of this era, is this birth of all these little cells all over, to say, the things that things that definitely do come up back in Andor, for example.
Oh yeah,
That's a clear and a more convincing and more satisfying connection, would be the type of groups we see in Andor. Yeah, again, I don't think they're gonna give us too much more about Project Necromancer. It'd be fun if they did, but again, that's not the point of this story. And so,
I hope the Zillaby's though
I mean,
Rex Mount Cantus though. That's what I'm.
yeah, it'd be fun. I mean, it's a little bit the point. I will say, I should say, it isn't entirely the point. It's part of Omega's story
That's true.
and why she exists and what she's about. So maybe we'll get a bit even more of an answer there, because we still haven't. But
I guess I'll toss
yeah.
it and ask if I don't
Mhm.
want to make this too much of the story. We can talk about this.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the results next week.
We'll talk about next week,
But I guess I'll get the question we'll have is, what will the characters, i.e., the Bad Batch, know, and what will we, the audience, know?
yeah.
Because that's one of those things I think that's kind of interesting. Like, we, the audience, know about Project Necromancer. We saw the scene, but the characters
Yeah.
themselves, like, they don't know. They just know, hey, they're looking for Omega to do some weird stuff with. They don't know it's called Project Necromancer. That might be something where, like, the characters don't know, but we know. So it's like an audience thing.
Yeah, that's just it. We've seen Rise of Skywalker. We've seen The Mandalorian.
Right.
We've seen Rise of Skywalker. We know what Palpatine's thinking, right? Nothing of greater consequence to the survival of the Empire.
Right.
We know what he means. At least we have a great idea of what he means there.
Right.
But yeah, that's true. Characters, they don't know the future because always in motion. Except there's no time travel and no time wimbly in the Star Wars, but always in motion is the future. When you're in the present. So
Exactly.
any further thoughts on this? We're gonna save it for next week.
Nope. I hope the finale's good. I'm very curious to see how long it will be.
It's gonna be good. We'll be fine.
I know it's gonna be good. I'd be very curious. I'm excited.
Yeah. Speaking of whether or not I'll be fine, a bit of Acolyte news. I'll be fine.
Speaking of which, did you see the TV spot in Korean?
No, but I saw that they released one. That was pretty cool. So yeah, pretty neat. Definitely ramping up. June 4th. It's coming up.
Yeah.
Just over a month and a bit. So I'm excited. But Leslie Headland, what are you saying here? What's going on? Showrunner Leslie Headland, she commented to Total Film Magazine via Screen Rant, talking about the Force and balance in the Force and whatnot. Honestly, the way I look at it is there is no light without darkness, no good without bad. So to me, and this might just be a personal thing, the Force is about balance. It's not just a Marvel superpower. The Force sensitive aren't using telekinesis because they're special, powerful people. It's because they've achieved balance. As Yoda says, my ally is the Force. So the idea of separation from that was really interesting. If you are unbalanced, the Force cannot protect you. So, I mean, my initial thoughts, and I think part of the point of these quotes or whatever, is to sigh and to go, oh, boring. I'm tired of this whole no light without darkness nonsense. But gotta hear her out. I've tracked with her so far. You all people who watch the show who know me know what I think about all that. Still, Leslie, tell me a story that plays with the sandbox. Tell me a story that pushes the sandbox, that plays with what I think Star Wars is and what it's supposed to be. Don't break Star Wars don't valorize selfishness and renege on the mission to help young people step out and make a positive contribution to their society and their community. But it's also true that there's no story without conflict. I mean, that's something Gene Roddenberry couldn't help but finally inject in his own stories. Leslie seems to be going for that full bore. So a few things to note, interesting to separate from the idea of separation, to play with, this question of my ally is the Force. I'm trying to parse what she's saying here.
I don't think it's anything different than what George has said, to be quite honest.
So let me get through my full thoughts and then trying to think about this. Is she? Well, that's the question. Is she saying no? I'm going to explore. I mean, this is the headline. We're saying I'm going to explore something different than what George has done. George has set up, or that she's going to change it and kind of almost maybe this clickbaity a little bit.
It probably is.
Maybe, or is she intentionally doing that? Is she saying that, or again, is she telling a story that is more of a cautionary tale of what happens? What is a story that posits balance as light and dark together? As I mean, there is the Clone Wars the Yoda episode in Clone Wars, Arc in Clone Wars, where he has to incorporate the darkness within him. Is that what she's getting at? Is that what she means? Or this way, it is possible to tell a dark side story, to look at a character who does believe that and have just the interesting story possibilities for that still upholds, again, the mission of Star Wars, the real world mission of Star Wars. So I think it might come down to how we define darkness. Do we mean evil, or do we mean centering our own cares and concerns? I don't think that's darkness at all. Do we mean being more aggressive and assertive and violent? Violence, yes, that would be darkness, but aggressive and assertive, not necessarily. So, yeah, I mean, also then, of course, the relationship to the Jedi. Does it mean be going independent from the Jedi? Yeah, I'm curious to what she's getting at here. Also, to say one major huge caveat here. This is a quote from an article quoting another interview in a print magazine. I haven't read that interview. It's a print magazine. It's on newsstands. It's not online, I don't think. I tried to find it. It's not online. So what's the full context of this quote? What's the full context of what she's thinking, what she's trying to explore, and how did that get explored, even in this interview, but also in the story itself? So, Joel, you seem to have some answers to my questions.
I mean, first off, I think we're imposing the mission statement on Star Wars a little too much. Star Wars has never gone out there and said that that's what their mission statement is. So let's not.
I mean, George has.
George says a lot.
You can ask, do I want a Star Wars that valorizes selfishness? Do I want art that valorizes selfishness?
Although I don't know. Anyway, but even then, I don't know. I feel like what she said matches up pretty well with what George has said in the past, and I have a couple of quotes here that kind of feel similar. Here we go. It's the first one. This is from 2002. This is when he was making Attack the Clones. I wanted to have a mythological footing, because I was basing the films on the idea that the Force has two sides: the good side, the evil side, and they both need to be there. Most religions are built on that. Whether it's called yin yang, God and devil, everything is built on push-pull tension created by the two sides of the equation. Right from the very beginning, the key issue in Star Wars. Excuse me. And the second quote, that is a big one for me. The Force has two sides, light and dark. It is not an inherently malevolent or benevolent thing. It has a bad side to it involving hate and fear. It has a good side involving love, charity, and fairness, hope. That's from George Lucas' Time magazine in 1980. And then finally, 2018 Star Wars archive book. You have the light and dark side in you. Your job as a human being is to try and keep those things in balance. so you don't go all over the dark side.
Mm.
It's not possible to go all the way over to the light side, so people struggle to keep on the light side because it's harder.
Mm.
That's what a Jedi is. A Jedi is someone that's pushing the light side as far as they can. And that is from the Star Wars Archives 2018. So already, much like
Mm.
what Leslie Headland says, there is a dark side. The dark side is just a thing that exists. It exists in all of us, just in you, just in me,
Yeah.
just in the universe. It's, he said both things got to be there. God, devil, yin yang. Uh, so I don't know. That part sounds very similar to what Leslie Headland said, and so
Yeah.
that's one thing about it right there. And I don't know. I read what you talk about balance. It's essentially what Yoda did in his episodes. Yoda knows he's got a dark side. And
Mm.
he's got to deal with it. You can't ignore it. You kind of have to.
Yeah.
You got to know it's there.
I'm wondering part of the issue then is George wasn't always consistent with a lot of things, with these things. Because at other points he says, at least the pull of the dark side, the thing the dark side wants, can't be there. We shouldn't try to be there. We shouldn't want to give into selfishness and violence. Right. And if you define that as dark, again, I think part of it is the power to define light and dark, us as light and them as dark. That's the thing that people push against. Again, and
is
that's the thing
violence dark side? I don't know.
Well, we had a whole. Let's have a whole
I-
podcast episode.
I would question that. I would question that a little bit.
I'm kind of pushing kind of the pacifist angle on that, but well, like trying to have mastery over life and death, the way Plagueis and Sidious try to do, right? And for those reasons, all that. Again, I'm wondering what we mean by darkness. Then, that's a really interesting point. We push against the dark side. It's not possible to go over to the light side. I think. One of the problems is, I'm gonna pull this up. This is where my mind always goes, is the Christian tradition, Jewish tradition actually says dark doesn't have to be there. It actually shouldn't be there. It's just it's more that it's a reality in our world that we have to contend with. But we have to contend with it. We can't simply accept it because it shouldn't actually be there. It's a mistake. It's absurd. It's absurd is the word. So and that's more of an Augustinian perspective. But yeah, again, it's these words get played around with a lot, and that's why I'm wondering what the context is. So and what what the story is. Maybe it is what all she's saying is darkness is a reality that we have to contend with, and that's her conflict and story come about. I don't know.
That's how I view it. I don't know. I think evil is a natural part of the world. Darkness just exists. It's there. That's just how the world works.
Yeah.
Man will always find new ways to screw each other over.
Yes, we will. That is true.
But I don't know. To me, it doesn't sound anything different than what George has said in the past.
Probably a bit clickbaity, you're right, but it raises questions in terms of a critical thing. I'm honestly a bit more intrigued now, frankly. Like, what does she mean? What is she getting at? What's she going for here?
How will the story depict it? Because let's face it, that's more important than what anybody says.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. Here's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
What if Fern goes dark side?
Well,
I doubt it. But
Well, first off, we all know it's Darth Nubs. We all know that's where this is all going. It's all
Darth
going.
Nubs.
We all know that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. To me, I'm gonna be honest. What people say in interviews and how the movies actually depict this stuff, that's also sometimes night and day. Let's be honest.
That is very true.
I'll give you my great example. I'm not gonna pick on George. I'm gonna pick on somebody else. Get myself in trouble. Zack Snyder says a lot of things about his movies that just to me, no, your movie is not doing this, buddy. You live in a different world than what your movie's saying. And which,
Yeah.
I mean, that ultimately, that goes into the whole, is the author dead? Do we care what the author has to say and what my
Sure.
interpretation of the movie is all about? Yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada. So there's that.
Mhm.
So, that to me is where I'm more interested in. It's like, sure, we can read the interviews.
Yeah.
It's like, get maybe into her headspace, but ultimately, how does Acolyte portray it in the story itself with all the context and the storylines and the characters and the arcs and where they're going and yada yada. That's more important than whether or not she says something like balance is 50% light and darkness, which to be fair, she did not say.
Right.
Um, I don't. That's not how I interpret those words, but we'll have to see what the actual story is to get a
Yeah.
good sense. Mm.
I mean, you said something interesting just in passing. What were her headspaces in?
Mhm.
And creative folks like to get into a certain zone in order to produce a certain result. And I'm wondering that's part of this is she's doing this thought of experiment of I'm going to posit that this is what this is in order to bring out this story, especially of I mean, we think it seems like this character who is on the outs with the Jedi and is tempted maybe by the tug of the dark side, but what does it mean to skirt the line a little bit? I mean, we got it a little bit with Balin and Shin, a little bit, but this might go even more full bore. With Vernestra, I'd be disappointed that this doesn't seem to be her arc, her direction. Again, that's the thing is we can't equate. We cannot equate.
For 100 years.
Yeah, well, you never know what she's been through, but we cannot equate distance from the Jedi as uh you delving into the dark side. We can't do that. Ahsoka did not do that. Qui-Gon makes some distance from the council, as we'll see a little bit.
Dooku did that, and look how that turned out
So
for her.
Dooku did, yes. And Vader did, yes. Anakin did, yes. But Ahsoka didn't, right?
Right.
And Vern, in her own way, even Lula Talasola, what Chris and I were talking about in Tractor Beam. Here's a spoiler. At the end of the last issue, she pulls some. Sorry to spoil. High Republic Adventures #5 by Daniel Jose Older. Joel, you watched the episode anyway. The Tractor Beam. Anyway,
I don't care.
she pulls some Jedi robes off the rack and burns them
Mhm.
as a way of saying I'm committing to Zine. Doesn't necessarily mean she's following the dark side. Yeah. So, and for a Padawan or a knight to do that isn't as big of a deal as a master. So,
I
yeah,
guess
I
it also
mean,
depends on like how much we valorize selfishness and violence, right? Like, is
yeah,
wanting something in life like I want this water bottle? Am I
yeah,
falling to the dark side because I want something,
no,
or I want to marry the love of my life? Is that selfishness? I mean, it can lead to toxic
yeah,
relationships, and we did a whole thing about romance. But it's like
yeah,
I don't know if Kanan wanted to marry Hera. It's like I don't know, Hera was good for it, and they would treat each other
mhm,
nicely. Kanan's not on the dark side. He got what
no,
he wanted, and good for him. Um,
yeah. So again, that's kind of my point. Is those aren't centering yourself, especially for folks who've been told by institutions that claim to be representing the light to deny yourself and using that and weaponizing that phrase.
mhm.
You know, then yeah, they're going to want to tell stories and consider stories that would say, I'm rejecting that concept of light. I'm deconstructing that concept of light. And I'm using the word deconstruction. If you know evangelical inside baseball, deconstruction is a big word right now. But yeah, again, maybe it's still an interesting story to tell. I'm curious to see. I mean, even Dooku to some extent, he's gotten a bit more nuance. Right? That Tales of the Jedi episode.
Mhm.
And I mean, Kevin Scott's Dooku Jedi Lost, but even more so the Tales of the Jedi episode. But also Kevin Scott's Keeve Trennis story, wherever that's going. I mean, that's a whole other question. So yeah,
I'll have one more thing because it's on my
yeah,
mind.
yeah,
Acolyte fun, everybody. Um,
yeah,
I do wonder because I've looked at the writers list. She's not the only writer, by the way. So there's one
right,
thing you got to keep in mind.
sure.
I got a lot of good writers like from House of Dragon and stuff
Mm.
like that. So you got some
What
good.
we got from Andor, right?
Yeah, I got. I think there may be an Andor or is that Dawn of the Jedi?
That's Dawn of the Jedi.
That might be Dawn of the Jedi. I know there's some
I'm
House of
confusing
Dragons.
my Space Wizard shows.
Well, one's a movie, one's a show.
I know.
So
I'm confusing my Space Wizard screen things.
well, I know there's some House of Dragons.
That's good.
But I do
Mhm.
wonder in terms of we talk about nuance. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think first off, I think we confuse nuance with morally gray, which I don't. I think you can be nuanced and still have some pretty clear. This is bad. This is good.
The struggle, right?
This-
There's a nuance is the struggle to continue to be good. as
right.
best you can.
But I do wonder if we'll have to be very keen in our analysis because I do wonder if like when we do see some Sith Lords, and I cross my fingers big time that we're going to see some Sith Lords, some
Mhm.
true Sith Lords.
Mhm.
You know, they're not going to be the typical Palpatine, like oh yeah, Palpatine clearly always mwahaha evil. He tries to be nuanced for like 5 seconds and then takes off the mask. It's like yeah, ultimate power.
Mhm.
I do wonder if we'll see some Sith Lords who like kind of keep their cool and don't just start become cackling madmen, but or women or non-binary people.
Who knows,
It's kind of like they might have a bit more going on behind the brain in terms of like why are they Sith Lords in the first place? Like, there might be a bit more they do have their reasons. They're not justified in what they do, but they're certainly more just I'm an evil sociopath who enjoys killing like Palpatine is. So I do think that'll be something I'll be curious to see as well if the villains are a little bit more not as two-dimensional. There we go.
like Sauron in War of the Rings or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
The thing about
Rings
that
of Power.
Rings of Power, that one, Rings of Power, that other fantasy show. Yeah, kind of. I mean, yeah, he inches closer to Palpatine, and he's like the kindly figure who ends up lifting the veil and being terrible edgelord. But yeah, it's that'll be good. That'll be interesting to see that, and that also again brings some more nuance to darkness and light, whatnot. Maybe be more convincing. Be convincing. This is why. I mean that from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. That whole line. But I take it to say, okay, yeah, the Jedi fall into the dark side, or being shrouded by the dark side in that moment. Before we move on, go for it. Unless that was the Vern theory. Yeah, definitely lots of acolyte theories. That can spring up. This show, I mean, it's getting buzz. It's getting some generating some buzz. It's gonna
has an image out there if you're a Phantom Menace fan.
Yes. It has an image. Interesting. Like a spoiler image, or
it's from the TV spot. So
okay. Now I'm curious. I don't know, what is it.
It's a Nemoidian. There's Nemoidians.
Oh, yeah, the Nemoidian. Yeah.
Nemoidians.
That'll be great.
Yes.
Always good with Nemoidians. All right. Well, Kevin, feel free to drop this in if you want. Grogu's Brosa, if I like that. A little volume prosper. There we go. If you're still watching. But anyway, do you have any last thoughts on this one, or need to move on?
Nope. I personally don't think it's anything that drastic to what George has said. But again, we'll just have to see the actual show, and
sure,
that's where the real meat and butter will come from.
Yeah, meat and butter, meat and potatoes, bread and butter.
Yeah,
whatever metaphor we want. Peanut butter. I'll say it's perked my intellectual interest more than it already has. Just this quote, and I think that was part of the point too. She's drumming up interest for the show. In part, not being cynical, just please do. It's gonna be amazing. So get more eyeballs on it. Get more eyeballs into the High Republic.
Can't wait to see that sneak peek during Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a theory. Here's the theory.
Okay.
Is Vernestra, as in the new Darth Plagueis, or some other kind of mentor teacher?
Is maybe she's saying it's Vernestra Plagueis? That'd be quite the stretch, but okay. I mean, hey, you know what?
That'll be interesting. I don't know.
That will be interesting.
She has seen some stuff. We know that she's seen some stuff between
she's long-lived.
The fall of Starlight and now. Yeah. So I don't know. So what were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. I mean, she is a long-lived species. I really had a bit of a thought just about Palpatine recently. That there's nothing in the canon or lore that really stops them from having it where Darth Maul is not Palpatine's first apprentice. That's just something I thought of just recently.
Yeah.
We just assume he is because he's in Episode 1, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know how many apprentices Palpatine went through. Who knows how many Plagueis went through before he got to Sidious in the new canon, or any Sith Lord for that matter. So that's just something. But
The
I don't want
apprentice is meant to be disposable until the master's disposable. That's how it works.
pretty much.
Yeah.
All right. No more acolyte. We be here all day.
Yes. We'll definitely be going head first into the podcast area. Come June,
Yes.
we'll have more eyes on the screen. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my shirt here. There we go. All right. Let's talk about the Jedi Council. And I'll
Yes.
kick it off. Or no, I'll let you kick it off. Then I'll go into a few of the things later on. But let's have a meeting. Let's have a Zoom meeting. Don't put yourself on mute. If the cat comes up, in this case we can take a moment to acknowledge the cat. But first order on the agenda, what is the Jedi Council? Go ahead, Joel.
Well, unfortunately, Matthew, you're on the council, but I can't grant you the rate of master.
Oh, what? I'm even like the Jedi librarian. Thank God.
I'm kidding. Okay, so
fine.
Yeah.
Teenage petulance.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, just a big brief background. So, the Jedi Council is very much a prequel invention. It first appeared in The Phantom Menace. Beforehand, there wasn't in other material that wasn't the movies. There was no centralized Jedi authority, really. In Tales of the Jedi, which were set 5,000 years in the past, Jedi were kind of just in various temples or enclaves or just doing their own thing, and sometimes they have little I forgot the word they use. It's very fancy, so I'm just gonna call it Jedi conventions where they all get together and conclave. There you go, conclaves.
They call it conclave, really?
Yeah, I think that's what the word they used in the Tale of the Jedi.
All right, why not?
Conclaves and kind of just decide the big important issues at the time. But then in the post Andor stuff with Luke, it was just kind of his school. I always like to think of it like the X-Men, almost like Luke and his Jedi just kicking butt. It's very Charles Xavier School for the Gifted, Luke Skywalker School for the Force Sensitive. On Yavin, so there wasn't really much of a quote unquote governing structure. Then the prequels come along, and I think that was how George was like, no, this is what the Jedi is supposed to be. Yeah, this is exactly what the Jedi is supposed to be. The council, and they got uniforms, and it's very standardized, and so then kind of other things and then after that, it's like, the Jedi Council, that's just kind of always there now. It's sort of a governing body to kind of a centralized organization for the Jedi, and they make the big boy decisions, big people decisions, and so that's the Jedi Council in a nutshell, and I'll open up with my kind of hot take. I think the Jedi Council is a fine organization to have. I think quite frankly, you know what? I think the Jedi Order is fine to have a little bit of standardization, a little bit of uniform, some rules. I mean, if you're going to have force-powered people who can do some crazy stuff and one of them goes nuts, it's all downhill, you should have some regulations. Every organization needs some internal governance and regulation and some discipline. It shouldn't just be random masters picking students off the streets whenever they like, and that's how it felt like in Tales of the Jedi, and that's how you get Exar Kun in another Sith War. So there's a bit more standardization to the rules, and I think High Republic weirdly kind of found that nice balance between like you got all these temples and outposts, but you still got a central command and a little bit of uniformity. So, with that being said, Matthew, what was your overall impressions of the Jedi Council of the governing body?
Well, it brings up the question you asked off the top. 10,000 knights going around. Not only, they need discipline. They need and discipline in terms of keeping them in line, keeping them from tapping into the dark side too much, but also, accountability is what that is. But also direction and vision and purpose. And an institution that big needs leadership. And so, hopefully the leadership is can be accountable too. I guess that was probably part of the idea of making them a little more accountable to the Senate. So that caused lots of problems, but kind of the similar idea. I mean, it's almost it's not the papacy at that point; it's the Church of England who's accountable to Parliament in a way, but also in autonomous. There I go again, theology time. Yeah, I mean, the Jedi Council, it's there, it exists. It gives structure. That was a great point that in the High Republic, one of the ways that the Jedi are at their peak and they're flourishing is that their ability to have a common vision and common endeavor, common spirit, if you will, while also respecting that everyone has different ways of of responding to it and pertaining to it. And so the council's role is to coordinate and facilitate and foster both that collective vision and make space for way seekers, or make space for Padawans who need to, and not just the Jedi Council doing this, but ensure that the Order as a whole makes space for Padawans who need to go explore different things. And knights are always generally free to decide what they do, except when the Guardian protocols are in place, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. But I mean, we see that kind of level of discipline and focus. We see it in Phase 3, or we're hopefully seeing it in Phase 3. We see it during the Clone Wars for sure, and that's the weird thing, is that they're basically they become, like we'll see during the Clone Wars, they become the commanders in chief and directing this Clone War for the Sith Lord. So it's something. I mean, that's the thing, is it's something
they didn't know at the time.
They didn't know. They thought they were, they thought they were being the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy through a war. So hopefully someone like Qui-Gon would question that, and he did. But it is. I mean, Qui-Gon's relationship to the council is also something that's very interesting. One of the books we don't go into here is Master and Apprentice, but and we will talk about Living Force in a minute. But yeah, that he has this relationship where he recognizes its usefulness, but he'd never be a good fit, because for them at that point it's primarily about the common vision and ensuring common leadership and this focus. And does that blind them to the threats that are emerging? So it's a really, I mean, it's very much an interesting story point. Definitely makes me have more affinity with certain real world religions than more than others. With the green smoke coming out of the Jedi Temple for the next space pope. But it's in an order of 10,000 that level of organization gets necessary, right? In order to be considered one unified family, one unified body. Otherwise, yeah, you'll have schisms, and you'll have splits, and you'll have folks going off, and maybe for good reasons, but also for not so good reasons.
Sometimes they split and form the Sith Order. It happens.
So they did, or I mean, and here's the thing though. If you're someone like, I guess I'm hoping Keith Trennis or whatnot, you can go off. I mean, Qui-Gon is free to go off and basically do what he wanted because he was a master. He'd earned his way to go off and do what he wanted and go off and follow the light. He just had no support, and that's part of the problem. The only support he had was a Padawan who was far more by the book than he was. And that was part of he embraced that challenge. He embraced that and saying, "Okay, Obi-Wan, I'm going to help you be a little less by the book, less of a stickler." So that by Obi-Wan's time, he's able to make the most of in Revenge of the Sith. He's able to make the most of an impossible situation being on the council itself. So yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things about the prequels. One of the most interesting things, and thankfully, finally, I mean, whenever we get a Jedi Council meeting scene, I'm like, oh, I get excited. Like, okay, we're actually talking here. Space Wizards talking. So, yeah.
Also, I looked it up. It was convocation, but they also call it conclave. So yeah,
Yes.
Jedi convocations are a thing. They
Mhm.
sort of stopped in Legends. They sort of stopped happening after 3,952 BBY. Although
Mhm.
Luke went to a couple, so that's cool. But I digress.
Yeah.
Term
Luke.
limits. I think the Jedi Council should have term limits, like maybe two
Mhm.
10-year terms. Keep get some fresh blood, new ideas in that council.
Were we saying like actual absolute years, or maybe like as a percentage of their species average lifespan or something?
I was saying absolute year, just like two
All right.
10-year terms.
So that's a
Yeah,
way of
20
getting
years.
of them. Yeah, maybe. Why not? That's actually pretty good.
Keeps the
Yeah,
cycle going. Yoda was on that council for like 600 and something years. And
yeah,
it's like the Supreme Court's got less time. It's like the Supreme Court problem
yeah,
right now. Like eventually,
yeah.
just kind of like it's just the same. All Yoda and his buddies, and people who
Right.
kind of think like Yoda.
And that's a way to give injecting some accountability to the people, the head honchos, and
Mhm.
not just some accountability to the Senate, but an internal control. Yeah.
Right. That doesn't mean Yoda can't stop doing his thing. Like he can still give
Mhm.
his wisdom and just not making the leadership decisions anymore.
Yeah.
Still has his
I mean,
wisdom.
here's the
That's
idea:
my
term limits at a time, right? So 20 years on, 20 years off, depending on how old your species goes, and then you can go back on if you're old enough. Maybe something like that.
okay. That sounds fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yoda could be the grand elder statesman, but
Yes.
other people can come on the
The
council too and take
Grandmaster
up leadership
Emeritus.
roles. I
Yeah.
mean, like how many people you think didn't get council seats because Yoda, Jarl, Poof, and Oprah Rancisis were just have been sitting on them chairs for 600 years or something.
Yeah.
It's like that's three. There's three council members right there. That's like, nope, they haven't had changed compared to like I don't know whoever Deepa Palaba replaced and Mace Windu replaced. They're either
Yeah.
retired or dead. So
Yeah.
there's
Well,
that. Poor Yaddle. Gotta
yeah.
wonder about Yaddle's like who's she keeping from being on the council for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But no, as an organization itself, I think I think it's a good one to have. I mean, I don't know if like Ray needs one right now. If she's only got like two kids, she'll be a Jedi
No.
Council of one. Um,
Well, that's what I was curious. Like, when would Luke have gone to a convocation?
he went in 25 ABY. I don't know
Okay.
why, but he did.
But like, who
His
else would have
order.
been out there?
Well, I guess, they kind of. Oh, I'll look it up. But I do know Luke eventually did introduce a Jedi Council to his
Mm,
order eventually, although that was from out of universe reasons, just to match it up more with the prequel era at the
sure.
time. But
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, convocation. I don't know if canon has Jedi convocations these days, or that's just something that was invented for Legends because they didn't know that Jedi councils were a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Although,
it sounds to me. Oh, good. You go ahead.
are we gonna then ask though, who appoints the Jedi Council members though? That's something I'd be interested
Well,
in
I'm sure
knowing.
that they elect from their own, right? They say, "Here's a vacancy. All whatever 11 of us, we're going to say who we want. Who do we want to fill this? Whatever."
Okay, so the Jedi
That's how
convocation
it
that
goes.
Luke called
Mhm.
was to decide upon a unified approach to the Yuzong Vong invasion. So I guess maybe he just called up his 100 students and it's like, hey, we got to figure out what to do about the Vong. We can't just make a Jedi Council decision.
Yeah.
We have to all decide here. So maybe it's like a smaller one compared to the ones in Legends,
Fair.
the ones in the past. There were like thousands or hundreds of them. So
I mean, my impression is that yeah, a convocation is larger and more ad hoc, but the
probably.
council is the standing permanent institution. Yeah, there we go. That makes sense.
Right, yeah,
Um,
it's like a party congress compared to a Politburo.
yeah,
My
yeah,
screen
like like a
did it for a little thing.
constitutional convention, if you will. Yeah, you're freezing back and forth. You're in there.
Yeah,
We're good.
yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things,
Okay, I'm
and
good.
I
Sorry,
don't,
my internet just.
yeah,
I'm
there.
good. You're good.
I think Din is here. He's I don't know if he's caught up or is he's at the end. talking about I'm gonna bring the plug up right now. Why not? Now that you're watching, F1053 maybe makes remix. Check that out. Did I get it right? Okay. Here's the thing. My favorite thing about the Jedi Council is that it's a way of expressing who and exploring who the Jedi are at this time. That's why, I'll just throw back to this. When in my old podcast, For Christ's Sake, Anakin, I did, there was the council meeting in Light of the Jedi, and just this one page, and I went through that one page and just the whole episode, hour long, just me talking about how Jorah O'Malley is expressing the tensions and the questions, the identity questions that were before that the Nile pose to the Jedi, and how the presuppositions they bring to it. And so I'm going to dive into this. We have gotten a number of council meetings now, and this is why I thought, okay, I read the one in Living Force, and thought, okay, we have enough to really go into a whole episode about what the council meetings have we gotten, what do they say, how does that evolve, can we go into it? And just kind of go through and say, okay, we have a number in paper, and of course we have the ones in the prequel films, and so that's kind of the plan going forward here. The plan of this meeting, the agenda of the meeting of our council meeting. There we go. I need a gavel. So in Light of the Jedi is the earliest one chronologically we have, I believe. I don't know if we have any in phase 2.
Yes, because wait. Oh yeah, I always forget phase 2. It's technically chronologically before.
Yeah.
I don't
think
I'm going to say yes.
There probably was, but it doesn't stand out as much. So I mean, I've read it all, but I forget. So Light of the Jedi is the one that really stands out in the High Republic, and the reason it does, it comes about 100 pages into Light of the Jedi, and I mean, the situation is that there's the Nile threat is there, and there's this battle about to erupt in this system, and there's a question: do the Jedi at this time, they're free to either go or not? They're free to either, because the Republic is going to go, the RDC, the Defense Coalition, it has assembled, the Republic has assembled the Defense Coalition to go and meet the Nile threat. And the Jedi are debating, should we stay or should we go? Should we
stay or should we go? I had to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I was setting it up for you. There we go. So we have these, the Grand Masters saying, we don't necessarily get involved. We deal with smaller conflicts, deal with smaller issues, try diplomacy, different things, or we're content in our temples across the galaxy. And then Jorah O'Malley steps up, and she's this Togruta master, and the Togruta aren't actually part of the Republic yet, which is an interesting point. But she steps up, and she's tired of the debate, and she says, "No, this is enough. I'm going to go. This is this terrible comment. I'm a Jedi Master, so whatever I end up doing, that must be the light side of the Force. That must be the will of the Force," which is a terrible thing to think and say. But the reason I bring this up, this is so fascinating, just in this one page in Light of the Jedi, it's the whole thesis statement for what the whole drama of the High Republic is how do we get involved? Do the Jedi get involved? Do they is this a change to, do they continue on the tradition of kind of non-involvement and kind of working with the Republic, but not trying to fight a full-scale war? Or do they change and they step out and go? At least this is the thesis statement for phase 1. And and I bring that up as the whole premise, the whole thesis statement for the High Republic, because I still maintain, at least, that this is the before thing where this is a question. The after is, no, there's this general retreat to the temple on Coruscant, and everyone has to hunker down, but also it no longer becomes a question. They obviously will be part of this war against the Nile. 200 years later, they obviously will be part of this war against the separatists. And how does that get there? And so these questions, but even then, we'll see a similar thing come up in the Living Force. But Joel, you have a bit more points about the Light of the Jedi Council meeting. What was your impression about the way the Light of the Jedi, that council meeting, brings up the tensions within the Jedi with the High Republic?
Well, let's see if I can remember. It's been a while, folks. I don't remember things very well. Just these things I don't reread over and over again. Well, the thing I always bring up, and this is because I remember a little bit of it, is, well, I forget who said it. Maybe it was Yarl Poof. Who said it? I know Yarl Poof's in this scene. That's something I remember. He brought up, Jedi have done the war thing before. And that's always something that I always wonder how they're going to reconcile. It's like, we're keeping the peace, not soldiers. What about all those times you fought the Sith in the Sith wars? That seemed pretty dangerous and bad. There's not a council scene, but a Clone Wars scene where, who is it? Is it Stacey Tim or is it Plo Koon who says like, oh, I have not seen combat like. I have not heard of combat like this since the days of the old Republic.
Right.
Talk about the old days where it's like the Sith empires were the big threat, and they were causing all sorts of havoc. So that's the part that and maybe you remember these parts more than I do. Of like, well, we had armies before.
Yeah.
We've been purged before. We've had some bad times. It's kind of also questions like, well, Order 66. It's happened. Stuff like that's happened before. Wasn't nice then. Wasn't nice now. But
right.
It's like that was that part of the debate is like, well, we have done this before. It's not like we're totally unprecedented, like from not getting involved.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you see an army torching an entire planet, are the Giants gonna sit there and go, well, will the Force, that planet's getting torched? We're all here with our lightsabers, but we're not sure if we should do anything. And I think, especially because, quite frankly, I think the Nile quite deserve they deserve to get their butts kicked by the Jedi, while the Separatists, at least in theory, have a lot more legitimate reasons for wanting to leave the Republic, and that makes it more of a political quagmire. Obviously, it's not, because the point is Dooku is not going to negotiate. He's being told by Palpatine, we're going to war. That's the plan.
Yeah.
It's you and I are going to manipulate this war, and we're going to crush it. We're going to crush everybody, and we're going to make people feel pain, because that's the point, to get my ultimate goal of ultimate power. But with the Nile and the fact that this is not a manipulated war between Lina So and and Marcion Rowe, unless there's like a weird twist, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
There is clearly one side is clearly the good guys here, and the Nile are not the good guys. They are the bad guys. So even then, the debate about interfering is a lot more, well, the Nile are not good actors. They are bad faith actors, while as the Separatists, in theory, have way more legitimacy to be good faith actors, if it weren't for the fact that Dooku and the Separatists are, Dooku's manipulating the Separatists to an end. So that's my thoughts, quite frankly.
It's a good point to bring up that, the appeal to tradition of past conflicts, because there's the question, and this is the question that is always brought up in these debates, is which tradition are we going to tap into? Are we going to tap into this tradition of actually, oh, by the way, we have stepped out in the past, as you mentioned, or are we going to say, no, this just isn't who we are now? It's a question also kind of getting at what we were talking about a few weeks ago. Can you maintain being a good faith actor while taking on engaging in military conflict? And maybe that's the question. Is violence inherently dark side? Maybe not. Maybe this defensive effort, and Jorah Malley and Avar Chris, and to some extent Keeve and Vern, all are part of this group of saying, we want to step out. And I think Stellan and Nelzar end up joining them to some extent. The fall of Starlight Beacon Falls, and kind of moving on a little bit more, but Starlight Beacon Falls, there's this year of just chaos, or not just people dealing with that personally. The storm wall goes up, and the occlusion zone is there in this whole corner of the galaxy. Now it's just a corner of the galaxy, so maybe that's why they say it isn't this galaxy-wide conflict. It's just the one all these books we're reading are focusing on. So maybe that's why we have the sense of it being such a big threat. There's the potential. That's the thing. There's the potential for it to be such a big deal, and a big part of the potential is the nameless. And so in Eye of Darkness, there's a council debate how to deal with the nameless. And this brings up a similar question, do we just try and, I mean, I think part of it, do they just try and throw in non-force sensitive folks to take him out? Do they have to be dealt with violently? Or can we, Yoda seems to want to be researching the rods of Daybreak, and what's the other rod called? We know Reith and Reith and Amadeo are going to be researching and trying to find a peaceable thing. But then, as you say, during this debate, how do we do this more peaceably? How do we do this more diplomatically? In brings this former Padawan who's gotten taken over in phase 2, the end of phase 2. His mind gets scrambled by the nameless. He falls to the dark side. He's out. But in the intervening 150 years, Yoda's found him, brings him back in, and says, okay, brings him at least to the council. I think Elzar looks at him as, what are you doing here? Showing, Elzar's kind of moved towards the light side, if you will. I mean, Elzar's not quite on the council yet, but he's kind of a witness. He's testifying in the council. Yoda is on the council. Brings Aslan in, almost to say, here's another option. Aslan Rel had just a few months earlier carpet bombed the planet because the nameless were there. They're taking this radical all or nothing approach. It, at the very least, it highlights it's Yoda's way, because it's a weird thing for Yoda to do at this time, I think. 200 years later, it isn't. For him to maybe order, I don't know, would he order a bombardment of a separatist base, of separatist planet? I don't know.
Probably. I mean, no, I wouldn't think so. Maybe Anakin would. Anakin
would. But would he at least maybe consider, say, this might be this last resort? Here's Yoda coming in, bringing this.
He wouldn't be happy about it, I don't think.
No. But Yoda bringing this character in and saying, this, at the very least, we have to take it this seriously. The nameless are this much of a threat to who we are and our connection to the Force, that maybe, I mean, this maybe gets to what Leslie Headland's getting at. Maybe there's something about the dark side that will enable us to better serve the light. At the very least, I don't know. And this is the question. I don't know if this is setting up at least a part of the solution to the nameless, or is it setting up Yoda for failure? Because it's the greatest teacher for him, saying, let's go take a vendor and bombard a separatist. I don't know.
I think a lot of it for me depends on what is the nameless MO, right? Like, is the nameless an innocent thing and it's just sort of like being manipulated by Marcion Rowe? It's like, because clearly Marcion Rowe is the bad actor here.
Yeah.
No doubt. Like, there's no negotiating with him. He is Jedi die or I die.
Although Gira Star Wars is trying to get him to negotiate, but
I don't think that's going to work out for her.
No.
I think they're both going to go down. But Marcion Rowe is very much like, he struck first. He blew up a space station. Like, talk about, who fired the first shot. He did. This is not, a preventative striking situation here. Now, as for the nameless itself, again, is it just kind of a natural creature that just kind of happens to have this bad side effect for the Jedi? But it's like, well, I can't help that. It's just what I am. Is it a malevolent? Is it an inherently malevolent creature that like maybe made in some Sith labs to be
Well,
Jedi
no,
killers?
if you read Phase 2, you
That's true.
actually know where they're from, right?
That's true.
So I think the thing is that Aslan doesn't care.
That's right.
Right? He's all doesn't matter what they want. Whereas for Wreath, I think Wreath will care, and that'll be part of the debate. Maybe we're going to get another council meeting where they're going to debate this again.
I mean, maybe
yeah.
that's where maybe that's the dark side.
Yeah.
The kind of the tragic ending of High Republic, if that's where they go, where it's
Mhm.
like Reese knows, hey, the nameless aren't actually evil. But then, oops, we blew all of them up.
Yeah.
And Marcion Rose
Like
dead.
didn't sing. It's starting to sound like failure.
Maybe I mean, who knows? But that could be it. I mean, again, we don't know. Phase 3 hasn't ended yet. We have a
No,
year to go, people.
we
So
do.
who knows what will happen? But that's always possible.
I even need to
So
finish Defy the Storm. So yeah,
I finished Defy the Storm.
you
So.
did. Yeah, I need to finish it. So yeah, raising these interesting questions that get picked up on 200 years later, and so we're going to jump 200 years. The impetus for it. In this one, the longest paper Jedi Council seen, two whole chapters, 8 and 9 of the Living Force. Maybe there are more councils. I don't think there's a council meeting necessarily, but it's a similar kind of question. Should we stay or should we go? But in this case, it's what does it mean for the Jedi to stay? What does it mean for the Jedi to go? And because that's the thing is at this time there are these smaller conflicts erupting. The Republic has, I mean, it's expanded, but it's kind of it's consolidated power. It's becoming the Empire already.
I would disagree with that a little bit. But.
Well, in the sense of consolidating all its attention and resources on the core, and saying we're having this what's the word? Not obstructive. Oh, exploitative relationship between the core and the outer rim, which leaves a lot of room for crime syndicates, for the Hutts to work their way in. At the beginning of the Living Force, what the situation is that there's all these different crime syndicates. There's this area called the Slice. It goes from kind of guess it's the mid rim to the core, and yeah, the Republic isn't able or willing to police it, to worry about it, because they're just focusing on Valorum as just a weak leader, and there are all these real concrete problems on the ground.
I'm sure Palpatine Plagueis are sending checks to those pirates.
Oh sure, yeah, that'd be interesting. It'd be a interesting little tidbit in Living Force if it goes there. Doesn't necessarily need to. We already kind of know that. But
The Office would look good in red.
Well, right, there's that one. That scene that was hilarious.
I love that line.
That was amazing. Yeah, I'm thinking with the boots. Anyway, but going, so there's this Jedi Council scene that, like Light of the Jedi, spurs on the events of this whole novel, and in Qui-Gon, he's encountered these syndicates firsthand. He's seen how rough it is there. They're all involved. A bunch of Jedi are involved in all those temples that were flourishing in the High Republic. A lot of the Jedi have pulled up stakes. Businesses have just pulled up stakes because it's just not profitable, and you can't afford to pay workers, or don't feel like paying
sounds
workers.
Like a libertarian nightmare.
Well, yeah, it's become a libertarian hellhole basically, and because all the corporations, the CEOs can't consolidate all their wealth. They'd have to pay workers more, and so they up and leave, leaving the people there to fend for themselves against these pirates and these crime syndicates and whatnot, or and possibly to starve. And so Qui-Gon goes and says, "Okay, council members, you got to go do something. You got to go
get off your butts.
Get off your butts." And what's interesting there, it isn't just do something for the sake of doing something. Qui-Gon understands that the council is there to show leadership for the galaxy as a whole, and for the Jedi as a whole. It's 10,000 strong institution, and uh, and yet, he kind of accuses them of having kind of a space wizard uh, bent of what Valorum's been doing, and just focusing all their attention on just governance in the core and how it just is galaxy wide. They're not so much how many Angels of Viego can dance on the head of a pin, but just looking at what there's a quote, we serve millions, we take care of whole planetary systems, involved in upending or stopping, preventing large scale wars and whatnot. And so Qui-Gon says, hey, here are these few planets that need our help and our attention. What do we do? How do we help people? What can we do? And surprisingly, they're actually more responsive. And Joel, you were mentioning this before.
Yes.
There's some question, some opposition. Is this the best use of our time? But I think what Qui-Gon's able to do here is to say, we have, even in our culture, we have this dichotomy, talk about libertarianism versus social democracy. We have this dichotomy between systemic responsibility, institutional responsibility, and small scale personal responsibility. And I think Qui-Gon's appeal, and he's successful in his appeal, to say, okay, you can overcome this false dichotomy. You can show large scale systemic leadership, address this systemically, that the Jedi take what's happening in the slice seriously by actually going to Quen and actually meeting people one-on-one. It's a symbolic thing. We know it won't really have as much of an effect large scale, but it's just this interesting thing that it raises this middle way forward, this third way forward of saying, if the Jedi Council go and have a pastoral visitation to this planet and actually show up and do a lot of practical help. The first part of this book, it's them actually meeting people one-on-one. So what's your circumstance? How can I help your situation? One of them goes to this school that's overrun by the students.
That's
and
Peel.
even Peel goes to the school that's overrun by the students, and he actually says, well, the teachers aren't teaching, so I'm going to teach. Another one, I think it's Plo Koon, and I think it's Stacey Tin.
Start a taxi service.
Yeah, effectively, say, okay, the actual humans opposed to droids. So yeah, it's saying, okay, people hopefully can look at that and say the Jedi are taking the situation seriously. So,
I have some thoughts.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this too much a review of the Living Force, and I'll try to keep it.
Yeah,
to
we'll
the
get
chapters
there in a few weeks.
that I know that you've talked about. So no spoilers in the chat room. Well, if you want to, fine.
I don't know if anyone's read it yet.
But a couple things. One, I really like about the book, and I think, well, I don't think it necessarily embraces the full George Lucas vision, the intent of the prequel Jedi weren't flawed, per se. Right. But I do think it pushes back a lot on one of the worst discourses of fandom of the Jedi had it coming. Like, they had it coming. Order 66, they deserved it. They had it coming. Which I think a lot of discourse among the fans get into. Because Jedi Council, when they're doing it, they're really helping people. If you read the book, it's really funny. They all have really good moments. We talked about this off screen, but I'll bring it up on screen. I'm glad they didn't go. Easily could have gone the route of like, some council members just do not like being around people and interacting. And yeah, exactly. They're holier than thou. It's like, no, so far almost every council member who's gotten a vignette is like, even Kiadi Mundi is like, he's helping out local folks, and even kind of the gruffer ones are like, they're just kind of helping out people. Like there's a lot of really good little moments. I won't, not spoiler, of course, of like just Jedi talking to a single person and kind of like almost being like the shoulder to listen to, and it's like, yeah, it's probably gonna be just that one time, but hey, sometimes one time is all you need. Not always, but it's like, hey, just nice to be the person to listen to
Right.
for a day. Um, and I really think it kind of it really adds to the tragedy. I think it's like, you
Mhm.
know, uh, I kind of like, well, I mean, we can get debates like, well, did it matter? It's like, yeah, Jedi did all its good things, but let's face it, in 10 years, it's all going to go down to heck or not. But
Mm.
in the moment, which I think is more
Yeah.
important in the moment, you're like, yeah, they are helping people. There's even some debate in the book itself of like, are we really helping? Is this going to matter in 10 years? And there's like, well, it's helping now. Let's just hope for the best. And obviously, yeah, the Jedi can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
That's a movie, but they are helping now. And I talked about that particular council meeting scene to get back to that.
Mhm.
Um, Mace Windu after the meeting's like, yeah, Qui-Gon's right. We've been sitting on our butts. We gotta get off our butts and do some bleeping stuff because we're bleeping
Mhm.
bleeping Jedi.
Yeah.
I don't know how the book ends, so I don't know if like
Yeah.
why this doesn't stick. Maybe it did. Maybe and maybe just events orchestrated by Palpatine overtook him because Palpatine
Mhm.
did become the Chancellor at the end of the day, so he got what he wanted.
But just a
Um,
year from now, right?
just a year from now, and Qui Gon does die and stuff like that. But it's
Spoiler
like
for a film and came out in 1999.
shocker, dude, and you're all going to
Yeah.
see it on May 4th. So I just spoiled the end of that movie.
Right.
How terrible of me. But
Yeah.
it's. I think it shows what I like about the book. It's like
Mhm.
it does show like no, these Jedi Council members weren't the problem per se. They had it in them. They have it in them all the time.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
seeing it having them in them. I'm very excited for that one Mace Windu book coming out
Yeah.
post Phantom Menace, where Qui-Gon's like from the post mortem's like Mace. You're the only Jedi I trust with this particular thing that I have been doing for the last couple years. I need you to help them, and Mace probably will. Um,
Yeah.
what was I getting with that? But so yeah, I think the book in that particular moment shows like
Mhm.
adds a bunch of nuance, and it's like, nope, it wasn't a predetermined path. And I think that's another thing Star Wars fans have a lot big problem with. It's like almost this predeterminalism of like, oh no, this was always going to happen. It's like saying World War I was always going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's not true. You could have it could have been prevented up to the day of when Franz Ferdinand got shot, or
Right.
even after a bit. So it's like, it's sort of like, sorry, I'm rambling, but I got a
That's
point to
good.
make. But it's sort of like when Maul's saying, the Republic's already fallen. I don't think we're supposed to consider Maul correct. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
technically he's correct, but I mean, is the Republic could have been
It's not
saved.
inevitable.
Yeah, it's not inevitable until the day Palpatine says the lines "First Galactic Empire," then it fell. So
Yeah.
it's savable up to the last second.
Mm.
Um, it didn't happen, but it was savable. So I
Yeah.
I
Good
think
point.
there's always that sort of. I think this book pushes back against the kind of almost deterministic nature that some of us in our fandom have about the Jedi Order and
Right.
that period, outside the fact that this is a work of fiction that's a prequel to something that's already happened. So
That's true. We've already
you,
seen it.
you know what I mean. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think the book makes the case of like didn't have to happen,
Mhm.
and there's a bajillion reasons why it happened, and you could have changed one or two things.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Before we move on to the thing from a year from now, and you take over the last half hour, I just want to get to Din's point here. Yeah, I mean, and I think part of Qui-Gon's hope in this is that they have these encounters. These council members have these encounters to have this internal transformation of of having a more of a personal presence, a personal touch, or at least saying in the way, and this is the thing, at least in the systemic large scale decisions that they have to make,
Mhm.
that the priorities are more on being present with folks
A- and
in these areas. It
mhm.
there I see your point. Even if folks who do have large scale institutional responsibilities, their priority can be shifted by these kinds of personal encounters. Because I mean, again, it's just one planet. They only have time to go to one planet, and then they
Mhm.
would have to get back to Coruscant. But
I
or
want to add
whatever else
two.
they're doing.
I want to
Sorry.
add two things to that. I think it's a good. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Point number one is Our universe and kind of boring reason of, but we don't really get to see the impact because the stuff that was written afterwards in the universe has already been pre-written before this book. So it's
Sure.
like, George wasn't writing this, where it's like, oh yeah, I remember that time Keanu Moody did that thing on Quinn. I gotta write that in this episode 1 back in '98. So there's that. But who's to say that those events on Quinn didn't impact these council members? It's just, events again orchestrated by an evil Sith Lord overtook everything. That's sort of like
Caught up in a war.
Big tidal wave. Like I'm sure there are real life events where it's like, yeah, we have things that change our life, but then events kind of major events out of our control negatively impact us. It's like, not to say those things don't matter. It's just like, well, that happened.
Or we're not strong enough to resist. Right.
That too.
I mean, I think about, here I go with this real world thing that's happening. I think about how Israeli society was about to turn on Netanyahu. They were about to say, no, you're eroding, you're destroying Israeli democracy. We're done with you. Your judicial independence and all that, and electoral independence. And then all of a sudden, and I'm not saying, all of a sudden, the hostages and Bibi drums the call to war, and the populace isn't strong enough.
The 9/11 effect, kind of.
Yeah, 9/11 is another one. It just isn't strong enough to resist their own inner compulsion to support a genocide against it, which is such a tragedy. And I'm guessing on the ground in Israel, there's a lot of internal opposition. It's just we don't see it either. We know in Russia there's been plenty. They just get arrested and silenced and executed and whatnot. But
I've seen some protests in Tel Aviv for Netanyahu to go. So
so
I'm sure. But that prequel again. It is kind of that 9/11 effect of let's rally around the flag. The Republic's in crisis. I mean, that's what Palpatine wanted. He wanted that thing of like, let's we gotta defend the Republic. Palpatine's gonna kick that no good Dooku's behind, and Anakin's the coolest, and yada yada yada.
It's a cautionary tale. It is, and it's a tragedy, like you're saying, right? Why this institution with a lot of well-meaning, powerful space wizards, come to their own deaths. Yeah.
That's true. Also, speaking of one more thing, and then we can move on to episode 1. Speaking of kind of questionable military decisions, Keanu Moody did have the clone literally burn a bunch of Geonosians in the Geonosian arc. So he did that. Yoda didn't do something like that, but Keanu Moody did that. So dang, Keanu, you're brutal, man.
Yeah.
But I digress. So episode 1 now. Yes. The first out of universe Jedi Council scene. So here's the question.
First one we see chronologically.
Yes, we see the council. I see, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So it's Qui-Gon telling the council. I believe I counted a Sith Lord. A Sith Lord. Here's a question that I wonder, and we can debate about this. Are we meant to see the council as antagonistic in the scene? Is that George's intent, or are we just projecting our own love of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin onto the audience? Where when you really think about it, again, I've always said this: if I were to tell somebody, "Hey, I saw a dinosaur," dinosaurs have been extinct for bajillions of years. So yeah, like, is Keanu Moody wrong to say the Sith have been extinct for over a millennia? It's like, the Sith themselves have not been seen in 1,000 years. We all, who knows what the current canon story. But we all saw them blow themselves up. They're dead. They have not. We have not seen.
Hiding. So I'll answer the question. His cynicism is his skepticism, not cynicism. Skepticism, objectively understandable. In the story, since we know, it's what you were talking about with the Bad Batch conversation. What we know versus what the characters know. We're on this journey with Qui-Gon, and so not so much antagonistic, but it's an obstacle to what Qui-Gon is trying to do. in this. Just like oddly enough, sort of an obstacle in light of the Jedi in the Living Force, rather, but he's able to convince them. In this one, he's not so much able to convince them because they're cautious. But again, it's in the narrative, it's an obstacle for a character to have to overcome. And so kind of our reaction to that is, oh, they're being kind of stuck in the mud. And I think we're supposed to feel that a little bit. We're supposed to feel frustrated. We're supposed to feel Qui-Gon's frustration and disappointment by it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they do at least let him continue his mission to help the Queen of Naboo. So it's not like you can't do anything. It's not fully antagonistic of you can't do anything more, Qui-Gon. You better, you better stay here. And,
like Qui-Gon never leaves the Order.
That's true.
Qui-Gon never says this Order is going to Malachor in a handbasket.
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. He could have. He probably wanted to.
I don't know. That's the question.
You know what, buddy? I mean, like there's this level of, I mean, some other folks might have. Again, we know Keeve does. I think for similar reasons, but he never. He always says, "Okay, I need to stay in order to try and be able to do the best I can, and push them towards what they could be." And that's why I can't be on the council, because then I'll be taken in by those institutional interests. But yeah,
we also, though, I do, and this is, I'm getting talking. I do wonder though if again we do project maybe a little too much antagonism between Obi-Wan and the council, because remember there's a book coming out that the premise is Qui-Gon doesn't trust any other Jedi but Mace Windu to deal with this thing post his death. So
well, we'll see how they explore that.
So that
again, I don't think it's projection though. I think it's just the way we emotionally work our way ourselves through a story.
That's true. I mean, in terms of like, would have Qui-Gon have left the Order or not? I mean, Qui-Gon's a fictional character, so it really depends on whoever was writing Qui-Gon. If he had lived post Episode 1, the Clone Wars.
I think George is positing them as an obstacle.
That's true. At the moment, though.
Yeah.
But it's like, if Qui-Gon was alive in Episode 2, would Qui-Gon have left Ahsoka style? I don't know what George would have done.
Definitely wouldn't have joined Dooku.
Oh, goodness, no. He'd be like, I mean, that would be the tragedy. It's like, Dooku's his former master. It's like, you gone too far, Dooku. Like, this is not light and life. This is dark side and Sith powers. But yeah, that's true. And then, obviously the second big one is, of course, Anakin, and Anakin's distrust of the council kind of bruised there. But here's kind of the other thing, and this is where I think a little bit of nuance is lost in the discourse. In a lot of ways, the council is kind of right, though.
Yeah.
Anakin does have all those things, and whether or not Qui-Gon would have managed to get them out of him or not, we don't know. Again, that's one of those things. Like that's why I don't really like that discussion, because it's sort of like it's fiction. It's all what the storyteller wants. And if George wanted to tell a story where Qui-Gon lives and Anakin still falls, he could have done that. So it's sort of a what if without really a basis on anything. Not if you guys do that out there, that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, remember, this is storytelling. It all depends on what the storyteller wants to tell with the characters.
Well, that's why he kills off Qui-Gon.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's Dave Filoni's that in the behind the scenes Mandalorian thing.
Certainly,
that's the point. It is him setting up story, right?
Exactly. So there's, but obviously, but again, to go back to the point, the council is somewhat right about Anakin, right? Like he not just in terms, because here's kind of like another one of my hot takes. The Jedi too old rule. Well, technically, you could say Luke. You can point to Luke Skywalker as like an example of like, hey, that worked out. You can point to Anakin. You can point to Ben Solo, and it's like, well, that didn't work out as well as we hoped. But then I could probably you could point it back at me, and then, but what about Count Dooku? He was straight at the baby, and
I mean that could be a whataboutist argument. I don't know.
So so it's sort of like the Jedi Council. I think we might again. I think they're not entirely wrong either in terms of being a little cautious of maybe not wanting to let this kid who's clearly got some trauma issues to
Yeah.
deal with. Give him force powers where you can choke a man to death.
Or his pregnant wife to death.
Or his pregnant wife to death. But obviously, in
Yeah.
some way, but also, to embrace that side a little bit, it is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways, where it's like, yeah, well, now Anakin doesn't trust these people,
Yes.
so that leaves good old Papa Palpatine to be the
Sure.
shoulder for Anakin to cry on in case the Jedi's rules are all stiff and whatnot. So I think it's a bit of both, right? I would say that's a bit of both of Council's not wrong, but they do kind of shoot themselves in the foot just a little bit.
I mean, it's not self-fulfilling prophecy. It's storytelling
Right.
setup and payoff
Exactly.
of a prequel, so we know where
That's
this is
true.
to go. But so I mean, that's the challenge of writing a prequel, and the why George just rose to it so magnificently is, yeah, we know where this is supposed to go, but the story of how it gets there, we're carried along. We're
Right.
carried along with, even if we don't think of it, Dave Filoni, Filoni tells us about it, but if we don't
Right.
think of it, the implications of Qui-Gon's absence. We feel that. We feel Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith saying, I don't know what to do. I can't handle this. I'm just going to go along. I'm going to sneak into the ship and do my best. That's the thing with this council. He's already 9. He's already had this essential attachment to his mother, as all kids, if they have a parent, whatever their caregiver is,
right,
this attachment that's ripped away, and then of course it's 10 years later, or whatever it is, ripped away even more violently, and
he doesn't know how to deal with that.
He doesn't. He deals with it in the worst way imaginable,
Yeah.
and I mean that's where I point to as the birth of Darth Vader, right there.
Right.
So, yeah.
So yeah, that's just something I think about. Those are kind of my hot takes about Anakin and the whole too young to begin the training rule, which I think some people kind of think with Luke. It's like, no, Jack, we're wrong. You can't be as old as you want to begin the training. I'm more of the opinion of like, maybe it's not about age per se, but you do gotta admit Luke is probably in a somewhat better headspace than Anakin was.
That's the thing. He's
older.
that
too. He is older. But also, Luke had a better upbringing. Especially with you add Kenobi into the mix. He had loving parents in Uncle O and Aunt Beru who they raised that boy right. When obviously when Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru died, he didn't go massacring stormtroopers. I mean, I guess he shot a couple of them in the Death Star, but that was more self-defense. It's still self-defense. He didn't let his anger consume him the same way Anakin, who, because he was a slave, because he was just him and his mom, he wasn't a well-adjusted kid.
So there's also no Jedi Council at that time to have these rules, these standardized. I mean, that's the thing. Maybe that's why that's why the discourse does this, is here's the standardized rule that's universally applied in this case. But I don't know. I mean, they give the reasons, your thoughts dwell in your mother. Right.
Yeah, true.
I mean, would they make an exception? It'd be interesting to see them maybe make an exception if they wanted to.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, we talked about Tales of the Jedi for a hot second. One of the characters who fell out to the dark side, his name's Exar Kun. And before he falls to the dark side, that's another character who is like red flags everywhere.
Yeah.
Like that guy, like he's ignorant. He's very like, I'm the best Jedi. I can wield a lightsaber like no other. I'm the ultimate duelist. He's not even a Sith Lord yet. And he's like very prideful. And even his master's like, you're prideful, Exar, and you're looking into Sith stuff. And it's like they don't do anything about it, but it's like, again, it's like, it's not about maybe it's his age, but also he was not a well-adjusted man. And I do think maybe that's why in some ways they do want to get them when they're young, because you don't form those attachments. You can kind of have Jedi training from the get-go, so that's all you know. Which,
and I mean, Luke is all about adventure and excitement at that point, and that's it gets home. Anyway, we should
we gotta move on. I'm sorry, I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah.
Jedi rules. So we move on to episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Not many significant council scenes here. Just mostly, hey, this is what's going on. This is the exposition. Anakin, go with Padme. She likes you, and be your bodyguard.
She
Obi-Wan.
sort of trust her, yeah.
Obi-Wan, go to Kamino. Figure out what we're doing. I put though here a lot of the Yoda, Mason, Kenobi as sort of the council proxy.
Yeah,
because they're not. Because obviously it's not the whole council, but it's like they're kind of there to represent the leadership. In kind of way, which is kind of true. It's like if Yoda and Mace are okay with it, then it's good. So they talk about begun the Clone Wars has the Shroud of the Dark Side has fallen. It's mostly just them talking about just kind of oh shoot, things aren't going well for us and we're not good. So unless you got anything to say about episode 2,
well, just the unofficial one that isn't the council session, but I mean, he's sitting in his chair, right? At the end.
Mm-hmm.
You have the senators out there looking at this grand army of the Republic. That's another thing. The first army mobilized for the whole Republic in 1,000 years.
That to me is the birth of the Empire when that army is there.
You could argue that one. Palpatine giving a smirk, giving a nice little
Mace Windu doing that. Not Mace Windu. Bail Organa doing that.
Bail punching the concrete like, this is not good. Then Yoda, I mean, this is the thing. So, and again, the reason my mind goes to it being like a council meeting is expressing what the moment in the point of time. The Shroud of the Dark Side has fallen, begun the Clone War has. Because the Shroud of the Dark Side has fallen, because the Clone War has begun. We have all these quotes through into Revenge of the Sith, the dark side clouds everything. They have trouble. This, the thing in the Living Force that they're supposed to be able to see the wider picture, see the whole game here, and actually, kind of they can in a way. They have the experience, they have the wisdom, they have the Force sensitivity to some extent. Not enough because they have to go to Quinn and encounter people for real. But at this point, almost like like with the Nameless, how that connection to the Force is a threat and is cut off. Here, something's going on with the Sith. They believe the Sith are doing their thing now. This is the beginning of, like you're saying, this is the beginning of the end. And it's this expression of
grief,
who we are, the grief of who we are and where we're at.
Yeah, and I'll kind of move us along faster a little bit. I'll add this to the Clone Wars meetings. Yoda and the council, when the council finds out, oh yeah, the clone army, yeah, Count Dooku was behind that. Darth Tyrannus, the Sith. We were like, well, we can't say anything. It's like
they're stuck.
Yeah, they're stuck, and it's like people. I feel like again, the Discord is like we kind of like, well, again, you brought it about yourself because you didn't do anything. Like, well, what are you supposed to do? Like Yoda himself says, stuck in the Lord of the Sith web we are. Like, yeah, both that Shroud of the Dark Side and like, yeah, we didn't want this. Nobody wants this. We're not happy. We're not happy to be warriors on the battlefield, but like we're stuck. There's nothing we can do really unless we find out who the Sith Lord is. Which then leads us
or lay down arms and whatnot.
I mean, at that point, that'd be interesting. But if it's like, could the Jedi just be like, "We're out, bye bye"?
I mean, I do think some were.
I mean,
I do wonder if that's when Qui-Gon would have said, "No, I'm out. I'm not doing this."
I wonder if
like Jody Hauser's one shot, the Age of Republic. He's warning them about this.
Right.
So I think
it would be interesting to ask if the Jedi, the collective, could be like, "We're done. We're going to Tython. We're going to exile ourselves."
Then I mean, that's the problem. Is then Palpatine would have found enough Jedi were loyal to replace them.
Or like, Jedi betrayed us. We're going to attack Tython because they took the Jedi. We turned their backs on the Republic. Boo.
Yeah, that's true.
Palpatine doing his thing. He's a master of propaganda. So, then we move on to episode 3.
Well, I do want to say one last thing.
Go ahead.
About the Ahsoka trial.
Oh, that's right.
There too.
I forgot about that one.
Because that's the thing is, they didn't have to put Ahsoka on trial. They could have actually done more due diligence. That is the one moment I think they really did fail. That we see like one big story arc, and again, it's given more oomph for us because it's the climax, season 5, which we thought was the end of the series, and so that, and of course, it affects this character that we love so much, who Anakin then sees this, and it's all about the Jedi being evil in Anakin's eyes.
Right.
They didn't have. They could have done more due diligence with the evidence there. So I mean, I think, and part of what's going on there, that there is it. Yeah, there's the habits of they're stuck. They're in the web of the Sith. They've also learned these habits of finding a scapegoat and finding the most expedient way to take care of this, because we want to make sure we're on the Chancellor's good side. Right. And so that they aren't questioning that enough. It is brilliant to see in Ahsoka, to see her reconcile with that some more. I think that's part of what's going on in that 5th episode. She's reconciling with the Jedi Order. I mean, it's implicitly there. The one that sent her into war, a teenage soldier, child soldier, but reconciling with the Jedi within herself. It has, but that council decision does have those implications. So yeah, on the whole,
that one was on them.
That one's on them, and it's a significant one that I think we still need to name. So
right.
Anyway, going to episode 3.
Right, episode 3. So obviously not letting Anakin be a master. That one's a little bit of, well, I don't know.
It's like Luke. I don't know. It's like Luke.
It's like
adventure
Luke
excitement.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see
it's
why
like
maybe
not letting Anakin be a paddle.
That's true. I can see maybe like, yeah. And also, he's only be doing this because Palpatine's kind of appointing him to be his personal representative on the Jedi Council. It's like, remember that was
trying to at least have preserve some last shred of independence.
Right.
From the Senate, the Chancellor, which is again an interesting thing of the identity of the Jedi in this time.
Well, this is not in the movie, or not as explicit in the movie, but it's explicit in the novel, where where basically the Senate just voted to give more direct power to the Chancellor, which means the Jedi Council, which was under the purview of the Senate, now it's under the direct purview of the Supreme Chancellor. So Palpatine legally can dissolve the Jedi Order if he desires. Which in the novel is a really great discussion about, Yoda and Mace are like, well, is he just going to dissolve us? And it's like, what? We're still going to be Jedi. It's not like you can dissolve the Order.
The Order, or just the Council? Or
I think it's the whole Order.
Well,
I think it's the whole Order, because the Order itself is under the jurisdiction of the Senate, and thus the Palpatine can decree the Order dissolved. And then they're like, well, you can dissolve the Order, but we're still gonna be Jedi. It's like, what? We might not have our official business cards, but we're still gonna be Jedi. Which we could do a whole podcast of like, there's being a Jedi, and then there's the order of it all, which is
the advantages to being a Jedi, but not part of an order.
I mean, Living Force deals with that a little bit. And obviously, both in the deleted scene, the novel, and obviously the scene we get, which all kind of say the same thing. The Jedi are getting a little antsy about Palpatine. They're like, he keeps consolidating personal power. He's taken away the Senate's judicial purview. He's appointing these governors. At what point do we, as the Jedi Order, a semi-autonomous body, have to say enough is enough? We can't do this anymore.
Should we stay or should we go?
Should we stay or should we go? Should we take direct action against the Chancellor himself? Stage a coup, pretty much. Essentially what they ask themselves. It's like, and it's like, because if Keanu Reeves, like, if he does not give his emergency power after the destruction of Grievous, he should be removed from office. Which is also an interesting thing, which I just thought of in terms of like, they're not discussing should we stay or should we go. It's like, we want to stay in the Republic, but we just don't like Palpatine at this point.
Well, stay and go as in continue going along with things, or take action.
And obviously Yoda is like, to a dark place. This line of thought will carry us.
Yeah.
We got to be careful. Now, again, to get one of my hotter takes again, uh, I I do think Mace is in his right to kill Palpatine at that point because obviously he is a Sith Lord, of an ontologically evil Force
There's the word
religion.
ontological.
I know I love that word, but it's like it's like Palpatine. He is kind of the biggest threat out there. I don't think this is someone where just judicial process is gonna help. It's like, can you imagine Palpatine in his little robe sitting in the witness chair? Like, yes, prosecutor, I did that. And that would be fun
What
though.
are you
But
going to do about it?
I know
Yeah.
it's like, well, you get off scot free, Mister Sheev. Congrats. Look at, I mean, look at our real world without the force powers, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So that's where the Jedi are kind of at their breaking point. Everyone's at
Yeah.
their breaking point, and again, I don't think it's just Jedi bad for wanting to coup per se,
Mm.
although it's Palpatine has shaken the institutions so much. He is it's kind of like a certain president tried to do for 4 years.
I might
Shaking
try
things so much,
again.
just kill the norms. It's like, well, on
Yeah.
the one hand, cooing is not good. It might make things worse. But on the other hand, he's a Sith Lord. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's the evil, that is, the Jedi Council might have played the game, but at the same time, Palpatine, that is his genius at work there. He
Mhm.
pushed everyone to these limits where it's like, yeah, we are kind of all in a corner here. What do we do?
That this is being considered and
Yeah. They're
brought
not
up.
happy about it, by the way, too.
Right. But to say it's a recognition of their identity has been taken away from them.
Mhm.
Who they are as an order, who they are as those seeking to serve the force
Mhm.
and be the guardians of peace and justice has been taken away from them. And it just over this process of being eaten away. Yeah, and that gets expressed in these council scenes in these. It's a briefing, but still, like you're saying, the proxy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I always love it when I know maybe I'm a bit more simple than I think I am. I don't know. Love it when characters just spell things out. Just say, "This is what we're thinking. This is why." Let's have a little discourse about it. So I don't know. Do you have any further thoughts on the episode 3 council scenes, etc.?
I don't know. I mean, I read the novelization if you can, because it gets into a whole thing of
Yeah.
like, Jedi been around a lot longer than this Republic, and we will be around a lot longer after the Republic turns to ash. That's what
Yeah.
Yoda said, which is somewhat true. I mean, yeah, the Jedi and Republic don't necessarily need to be synonymous with each other; they just choose to
Right.
be. Um,
Or they just fall into being.
They just fall into being, or they choose to be, and there
Mhm.
have been times where the Jedi like, nope, we're done with this Republic. We're gonna go to
Yeah.
Tython and exile ourselves out. So I do think it is one of those weird situations where I do think, in a lot of ways, Palpatine, you know, Jedi Council did shoot themselves in the foot in some areas, but in a lot of areas,
Mhm.
Palpatine outplayed them and he put them in a lose situation.
Yeah.
Like there is no
Exactly.
there's no good outcome here, really. Like maybe there's a less bad one if Palpatine dies, but it's not going to be pretty. I'll
Right.
say that. So yeah, they tried their best. Is I guess
And
what they're
yeah.
what I'm always getting at. Go ahead.
And you talk about coups, like who's to say whatever replaces them is going to be necessarily better?
Oh no, I'm not
It's the
saying.
real world question. I mean, I think we're supposed to believe that, but it's a real question. But yeah, I think that is a good time to wrap things up. I want to make a bit of a kind of a summary statement, though. I mean, one of the things
Mm.
the thing I love about the Jedi Council is, the drama of the Jedi in at least in the stories we have overall is who are we in relationship to the rest of the galaxy and the problems and tensions. How do our problems and tensions map on to those of the rest of the galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
uh how do we engage? How do we engage these Star Wars that go on? And should we hold back? Should we kind of hold back by being a part of things? That's the weird thing that happens in the prequels is they kind of kind of retreat into being the generals of the Republic, or do we go out and do we, like with Palpatine, do we say no? A story that is begun, again with the relationship between the Jedi going out and joining with and supporting and fighting alongside the Defense Coalition against denial. All of this gets taken up and all gets debated, and the story in a way gets told through these council meeting scenes, and that's why I find them so fascinating. Is that these meetings, they actually tell the story, and because we never in none of these discussions, we just simply stuck to what was said in these meetings, which is what was said, why those things were said, and how that affected the story itself. And so that's just important to note, and really great thing to note. So
and I'll just my final say on it as well. I think we should probably do an episode about this later as a kind of addendum. Is when do Jedi need to Jedi, and when do the Jedi need to order? Which is a little bit of something that you'll see in Living Force. Is like, what? Yeah, because on the one hand, as we talked at the beginning, it's good to have the Jedi be intimate with locals. But when you start growing your order up to 10,000, you don't want a bunch of laser sword people running around willy nilly. There's some order and discipline is needed.
And again, that's the at their height, they figure that balance out. They lose that balance over time. So yeah, that's when they need to Jedi and when they need to order. I like that. That's a great one. Fun times. All right, it's a good place to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us, folks in the comments. We got first time viewer. If I can find her comment, Tilly. Thanks for joining us. Tilly. I don't know if you're still here. Yeah, it's gonna be. It was a great conversation, Joel. Loved it.
Yeah,
this is kind of talking about Space Wizards. It's my jam. My peanut butter and jelly. There we go.
And in June we get to talk about evil Space Wizards.
Evil Space Wizards. There we go. And there's Jedi in there too. So we get. But yeah, let us know what you thought of the conversation tonight. Yes, thanks, Kevin. Also, first time for chiming as well. May the Force be with you. Great conversation. So again, comment below. Keep the comments coming. The box is gonna stay there for all time till the internet goes away. Whatever happens to YouTube or who knows what. Also, of course, on Facebook, on Twitch and Twitter, etc. Please do keep commenting, like, share, subscribe to the Underworld channel, all that fun stuff. Joel, again, great conversation.
Yes.
Tonight, as usual. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID 2021. Again, JID 2021 on Twitter, where I tweet my thoughts about all sorts of things. I tweeted a very interesting topic this recently about the expanded universe and its political leanings, which, Matthew, you got to see a word that you like to see called the Overton window. That was fun. And of course, you can follow us at Ion Cannon Pod. I got it right. Ion Cannon Pod. EYEONCANONPOD. So follow us there.
Yes. Twitter, Instagram, Threads. Forgot to mention, talk about Sketched Out. How's that going?
Oh, no, that's going great. This Friday, May the is it gonna be Friday, May the 4th? May 3rd. May 3rd will be the Star Wars episodes. Yes, the Star Wars episode.
Like they timed it.
Yeah, we timed it perfectly. We're very excited about that timing. I had a particular hand in writing that episode. So if I hope you watch it, Matthew, maybe you'll notice you can see my influence in the writing.
Oh, I'm sure I will.
So
the premise, it's just four friends sitting around talking about TV and entertainment, right?
Yeah, they're about nerd stuff.
Nerd stuff, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty fun. I've seen the first two episodes. I know this is the Simpsons one, but I don't know enough about Simpsons, but I'll watch it anyway. Yes, check that's on the Culture Slate YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Culture Slate. Like, subscribe.
Yes, check that out. You can follow me personally on Twitter, NEUG485. I don't know what I'm tweeting, probably about soccer these days. Instagram and Threads, MNEUG1138. Probably a lot about Taylor and that one in my Insta stories. Not gonna lie, Torture Poets Department is a go. It's rare and up in my noggin right there. So yeah, check that out, of course, at Iron Cannon Pod. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. we're there. Not so much on the Instagram and Threads, but definitely, a little bit here and there on that. Of course, the Underworld Discord server. Check the link in the description below. And again, up on the channel right now, Dom's interview with Graham Hancock on the history of Lego Star Wars, right here on the Underworld channel. Of course, tomorrow, Wednesday, Tractor Beam Comics Reviews, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Chris and I are going into that episode 1 special, and of course that animated show that we're going to talk about on Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. They're also going to talk about the animated show for sure, the season finale, series finale, etc. That's all, right here on the channel. On Hannah's channel, on the Rayside channel, May 2nd. That's also Thursday. Her interview with the one and only Gavin Bouquet. Looking forward to that. All about my prequel love, getting my prequel love in even more. This is going to be a very prequelist week, I'm predicting. Because May 3rd, I'm going to be seeing Phantom Menace. And then May 4th, my partner in prequel, my buddy in prequelism, Din, who's in the comments plenty tonight. Thanks for chiming in, Din. F1053 Baby Makes 3 Mix drops. It's on his band F105 on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Check that out. And of course, May 5th, I'm seeing Empire Strikes Back because they're just showing it in the theater. So it's gonna be fun. Kind of a prequelist movie, not quite, but it's all Star Wars is prequelist in my books nowadays. That's what I'm saying. I'm owning that. Doesn't quite make sense, but I'm owning it anyway. But yeah, next week, as we've discussed, we're podcasteriating. I'm making that podcasteriating. We're talking about the Bad Batch, season finale, series finale, all that, the whole story of that series, as we do on Iron Canon. We haven't,
and how it fits into the canon.
And how it fits into the canon. For now, we don't do extended episode reviews. We tend to, at the end of a season, end of a series, take the time to look back and say, okay, what is this saying? What is it doing? How does it relate to everything else? And what's the story itself? And now that we can see the full picture and tease it out, as I mentioned, in June, that's going to change. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
We don't quite know. We'll have to talk about Joel. I'll talk about what that'll look like, but we're the home for High Republic on the Underworld Network. And so here's a show set in the High Republic. So we're going to want to talk more about it than usual. And so that's kind of the thought, kind of the plan, but we'll let you all know that, through May, we got a bunch of guests lined up. So we got hopefully some guests next week, and then the guests the week after, and then guests the week after that. And, it's like we don't do podcasts on our own anymore. I'm just kidding.
Some months just line up that way. We do.
Yeah, it just happens. It's Star Wars month. It's a Star Wars party. It's the Phantom Menace at 25 party. But yeah, starting next week, we're doing talking about the Bad Batch series finale. So come back, please do come back. 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and all the socials: Underworld Facebook, Underworld Twitch, Iron Canon Twitch, Underworld Twitter, Iron Canon Twitter, where we just like to share the love around wherever we want. Also Spotify and Apple Podcasts right after this episode. That is going up there. And then, so if audio is more your speed, please do check us out there as well. See, but that'll be, I gotta get Tractor Beam on there. I gotta be like the Jedi Council and get off my butt and get Tractor Beam on an audio feed. I admit I haven't done that, but for now, I'm gonna put this one on, and then take it easy. Read some Living Force, read something else. But yeah, anyways, next week. Podcasting. I've stretched this out as way too long. Podcast heading the Bad Batch. We'll probably call it something else. Anyways, I'm done. I promise. Joel, let's blow this thing and head home.